Maria, you spoke with the experts on this topic, that it's not just right now, it's been an issue in years in the past, but because of the pandemic, has it really risen recently in past months there in Houston?
Hi, Daytona. Thanks for having me. So yes, yesterday I spoke with law enforcement, a state agency, the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, about what they're doing. They work on the front lines combating human trafficking. They say that they've encountered more challenges, that they feel that recruitment is increasing. And then today I spoke with a nonprofit that helps survivors and victims, and they say that they're also having a really hard time. And organizations like the Polaris Project, which runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline, that organization says that they have seen an increased need for human trafficking services and an increase in human trafficking cases. And so both organizations, the nonprofit as well as the state agency that I referenced, they all say that there has been an increase in human trafficking cases, and that some of the challenges that they've encountered, so for the nonprofits, that is reaching out to victims. So they would often work with juvenile detention centers, jails, schools to help identify these victims. And because of COVID-19 restrictions, they haven't been able to do that. Or they would also do outreach on the street in areas that are known for prostitution, and they have not been able to do that to keep their staff and volunteers safe. And so just an example of how hard it's been to identify victims. So the nonprofit that I talked to is called United Against Human Trafficking, based here in Houston. The director of partnerships there tells me that in 2019, they were able to identify 133 victims of either labor or sex trafficking. In 2020, that number went down to 33. So you can see that not being able to go into these detention centers or go out on the street where they know prostitution happens has really limited their ability to reach out to victims of human trafficking.
You know, I've also seen statistics for domestic abuse really rise. Do they say there's any correlation between those two statistics?
Yes, that's something that we have experienced here in Houston, and I'm sure all across the country. You know, as far as domestic violence or violence against women in general, one of the things that the nonprofit that I spoke to told me was that in the beginning of the pandemic, they were getting reports of those who were willing to buy sex at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, at the height of the shutdowns, were actually those that tended to be more violent. So the victims that were out there being forced to into sex work, that they were more likely to experience some kind of beating or another act of violence against them.
Yeah, I find this really interesting because people are technically supposed to still be indoors. A lot of states were in stay-at-home orders and everything along those lines. So you would think it would be easier for them to spot this, but how are they saying that they're hiding this cycle of trafficking in Houston?
So yesterday when I spoke with the director of the Special Investigations Unit for the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, again, they work on the front lines combating human trafficking, looking at crimes that are happening at places that have alcohol permits. So he says that, you know, before it was sort of, they would send people out into bars to check out what was going on. But now a lot of the activity has really moved online. So it's, you know, just like we have moved into more online meetings and online school, traffickers have followed suit as well, and that's what they're doing. So he says that it's more about intelligence gathering, more relying on the community to call in tips because they don't have, you know, the places that are open as much. But, you know, something else that I found really interesting that he told me yesterday is that since Texas has been one of the states that has not completely shut down, so bars, for example, here in the Houston area are able to operate at a 50% capacity. He says traffickers are actually bringing victims out of state, and that's something that they're just starting to realize.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question there. I know it's a problem in Houston, but are they saying it's a nationwide problem as well at this point in time?
So the UN, the World Health Organization and the UN have both said that they believe that human trafficking has increased during this time, as well as nationally here in the US, the Polaris Project, which again runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline, they say that they believe that they are seeing an increase in human trafficking cases. And then again, the state agency, this nonprofit, they're both saying as well that they have seen an increase in human trafficking.
Yeah, and we always hear it around the Super Bowl as well. Human trafficking and sex trafficking really skyrockets at that point in time. So I feel like it's just kind of a recipe for disaster right now. Any last thoughts from you, Maria? After doing this story, I've done stories like this in the past before, and I just think it's such an interesting topic and very serious. And it's not just women who are older, it's children too. It's young people, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things that both this nonprofit and this law enforcement agency say is that they believe that recruitment right now is at an all-time high because people are facing serious economic hardships, and so they might be willing to do things for money that they weren't willing to do before, and also recruitment of children online because so many more are spending time on social media platforms, and so that has always been sort of the way that traffickers tend to recruit and groom victims. And so now with kids spending so much more time online, they say that they believe recruitment is at an all-time high.
Yeah. Anything?
So for parents, check your kids' phones. That's what they say.
Yes, that's what I was just going to ask. People like you and me, is there anything that we can do to be helping at this point?
So one of the things that the director of this special investigations unit told me yesterday is that, again, they really need the community to be the eyes and ears for them. So if they think that something may be going on, whether that's labor or sex trafficking, to call in the tips, to, if there's a vehicle involved, to call in that license plate number. And these tips can be left anonymously. And that not only goes for here in Houston or Harris County in Texas, people can do that to the National Human Trafficking Hotline as well.
Sorry, Maria Salazar there with Fox 26 in Houston. This is your second time with us. We appreciate you being here on News Now.
Thank you.
And it's like we were saying, I mean, it's not just a Houston problem, it's a nationwide problem.